way that they would have flew all the way over those pins and just zeroed in on those 10 deer. And so to her point, our whole herd was probably infected.
Yeah.
But it was just those 10 that we lost that just had the weak immune.
Yeah, one thing I was going to mention that I forgot was with the blood testing, you can actually have your deer tested to see if they were exposed to EHD. So if you've had an EHD outbreak go through your farm and you're not sure if the surviving deer had been exposed to it, you can actually do a blood test. And we have, 2 diagnostic labs in Kentucky, Breathitt and UK. You can work with your veterinarian, get that blood tested, and that'll give you some information about your herd. Okay, sorry.
All right. Next is Kelsey Rubel. She's over the CWD monitoring program with the Kentucky Department of Ag. So everything that you all will do regarding deer, as far as tagging, moving, so anything that you will do regarding deer farming, other than having your fence inspected, will go through Kelsey. So I would listen, not that you wouldn't, but I would just, everything's going to go through her desk, and from permits to moving deer and so forth. So.
And let me say this, she's been awesome, excellent to work with. I've not had a bit of trouble with paperwork and animals coming back that wasn't ever there, or that died 4 years earlier, other than some of the previous people that were there. But I want to give her a big round of applause because she's been great with her paperwork. I mean, she's done an excellent job.
She's totally lying.
She paid me good money, so that's it.
So I won't keep you all too long. I'm here to talk about a few things. First of all, I want to talk about applying and renewing, and then I want to talk about tagging your animals and then testing your animals. And I brought some tags and things I can pass around, but don't take them because I'll get in trouble. So the first thing, how many people are not in the program or just here about learning? Oh, okay. I brought applications for both the Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Department of Agriculture. So the first thing that you want to do is get your fencing set up. And I have the application for that if you want to see me whenever we're finished. You get all of that completed and they let me know when everything is good to go. I've got several applications now. I'm waiting on the permits for the fencing to be completed, and then they'll be good to go. But I don't know what you all have been doing, but I've got like 10 new people in the past 3 months, which was really drastic. I mean, I've been here about a year, and I've not had that many new ones in that short time span. But first of all, you're going to get your fencing done, and I also have a map. I know a lot of people have had new captains in the Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I've got a new updated map for that as well, so you can call them if you have anything about your fencing. The next thing you're going to do is retain a permit from me. So you're going to apply through us, and I have an application here. So all points of what you need to do in here is have your application page. Most everyone in here that is in the program has done this. The application page, you're going to have a list of the animals that you have in your property, which is probably the most important part of this application because, I know what our inspectors see, but you all know what you have. So just everything that has a tag on it, if you want to put your new fawns on there, that's fine. Just send that in with your renewal or your initial application. Well, actually, you wouldn't have them with initial application anyway. And then you're going to have something called a vet of record, and that's going to establish a vet for your farm that you would call at any time you have any problems with your deer. And I usually have every person's vet in my database anyway, so that one's not as hard to get. But those first two are really important for your application, and I have plenty of these. If you all need to renew, you can do it now, and I'll take it with me. If you want to apply, I can also take it with me too. So that is your annual permit, and that's different from a permit for movement. So if you're wanting to move deer in any fashion from your breeding to wherever, first of all, you're going to have your herd vet come and inspect the animals that are going to be moved. The vet's going to send me that paperwork. It's called a CDI, and it's an inspection form that has everything on there that I need. That's going to tell me what animals are moving. And then I'm going to approve the permit with everything's good to go with the buyer and the seller. And then I'll send that permit back to the vet They'll let you know when you're good to move, and that is your moving permit. So that's something you will have to do anytime you move an animal from anywhere. So what I ran into a lot this past moving season was you all were moving a lot of fawns to wherever. I didn't have those fawns, so I had to go in and add all of those fawns. So I had a lot of additions earlier this year, or I guess whenever you all were moving the end of last season. I had a lot of new additions for you all. So that's why this herd list helps me, because I don't have any of these deer in my database yet. So I say my database, and it's really a headache if anyone ever has to look at it, because I've got everything you all have in there. So it's easier for me if you have something that I can put in there, and I can go ahead and just move everything around. Does anybody have any questions on initial or moving permits?
And the CVI is good for 30 days from the date. And like, you know, they're good about turning it around. Part of the requirement is when you move deer, even within the state, a Department of Ag representative will need to be there at your farm when they load those deer. And then if you're bringing deer in from another state, then a Department of Ag representative will need to be at your farm to cut the seal and inspect the ear tags and so forth, and make sure they're healthy looking and so forth.
And when he says another state, he means Indiana, because we don't buy from anywhere else right now. They're the only safe place we have right now. So yeah, we'll have an inspector in your area, either on the loading or unloading if it's within the state. If it's from out of state, of course, just on the unloading. They'll tell me what's moved and what's not, because sometimes half of them don't even move when they're supposed to, just by whatever reasons. But they'll tell me what's going to move, and I'll go ahead and move them into the purchaser. Yes.
My question was, if you're moving animals, say late in the evening, where if you are coming from Indiana, you're gonna get home late in the evening, like nighttime or whatever, what do you do about that? How does that work?
So you should already have the permit, obviously, if they're going to be moving in. Our office pretty much is flexible with that. Most of the time we ask if it's after 9 to wait until the next morning. Of course, we can't do that, you know, if you have some delays or something like that. Most of our inspectors don't care, though. As long as they know, they're pretty lax about that.
If they're not available, I think your veterinarian can do it too?
Yes, your herd vet can be there to unseal the trailer. It has to be with, you know, it has to be, do what?
That could get kind of hairy if, you know, you didn't have somebody available to see these deer.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, but you can have your herd vet or I mean, if yours isn't available, as long as that herd vet is licensed in Kentucky, they can break that seal.
Okay.
So and they'll do the same thing, because most all of them are in our program, so they'll let us know too.
How long does the initial application process take?
I want to say that for me, not to brag, but I can get it done in a day, but I have to have everything that I need. So once your fence is inspected, I have to wait on the okay from Fish and Wildlife before I do anything else.
So it's a good idea whenever you submit your application, because you're going to submit, Fish and Wildlife will have to come out first. All right, so the way the process will be, you'll send in your application, your $150 fee to Fish and Wildlife. It'll go to Kyle, for the most part, Kyle Sam's in Frankfurt. Kyle will contact the captain in your area. Now, to expedite, you know, like I said, we've got a list of the captain's names. So you could call your captain, you know, maybe, you know, at least wait a week. All right, if you don't hear anything, contact the captain yourself. And I know we've got a situation in eastern Kentucky where we've got maybe 3 farms that we're waiting. They've got the fence done, but we're waiting approval. And so I emailed our captain, and he said, well, from whatever part of the state you're from, they've got a missing boater on Lake Cumberland. And so Fish and Wildlife is responsible. So all those folks are on the lake looking for the lost boater. And so that's more important than, you know, as far as inspecting the deer fence, but that's part of our situation now, waiting on. And of course, she can't approve to move deer until they get that fence inspected. So the turnaround, like she said, once they come out and inspect your fence, then it's usually within probably 2 or 3 days, because then you'll get a copy of your inspection form from Fish and Wildlife, then he'll send a copy to Kyle, and I guess Kyle notifies Kelsey. And like she said, it's usually, I mean, the turnaround's real quick.
Now,
From what, go ahead.
when I do put my fence up, before I do that, do I have to contact Fish and Wildlife before I do put my fence up, or can I just go ahead?
No, you go ahead and start fencing.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that. I'll as far as what the major things that Fish and Wildlife look at for your fence, just to be safe, but we'll talk about that afterwards.
That's fine.
From what I understand, it goes through the regional captain, and then the captain at Frankfurt also has to approve it too. So there's one of him. So if it takes, I mean, it may take up to a week, I would think, with some people. But then when it gets into my office, I usually can get it done that day. And if you're needing to move deer, if you have it done and you're needing to move deer, I can just tell me and I'll call you. Even though it's going to take like 3 or 4 days in the mail, I'll call you and say you're good to go.
So my point is, I'd go ahead, when you mail your application to Fish and Wildlife, I'd go ahead and mail your Department of Ag application in to those folks.
Okay, so now I'm going to talk about animal identification. So for Fish and Wildlife, they require that you tag your deer at 6 months of age. A lot of people do it as soon as they drop, which is probably the best option. That way they're already on there. We require 2 forms of ID at a year old. So it's kind of iffy. I would go ahead and do it when they're young and you can still catch them. And we require a official ID and then a flop ID. So a lot of you all have these 61 tags. They're called News 9 tags. These are the metal tags. You all can pass these around if you want. They're kind of sharp though, so don't cut yourself or I'll have to clean them and stuff. So then we also have just a regular 840 tag. This is not a high frequency tag. This is just a flop tag. It's still an official identification, but it just has the 840 16-digit number on there. I think it's 16. And then you can write whatever flop tag on there. It also has a matching button, so this is considered both forms of ID. It has the 840 and then the flop. Then we
But
have,
it's all in one tag?
do what?
But it's all on one tag?
No, it has a matching set, so there's a
Okay.
button and then a matching flop tag. So these are the high frequency button tags. This is just the official tag, and then you would get whatever type of flop tag you want from any retailer. And then this is the button and the flop. We would be okay with this being both identification, but I don't think Fish and Wildlife has yet approved that. So this so far is just the official. This is also a high frequency tag because this big large button here has the high frequency tag in it. And Jimmy was telling me he got some from Fort Supply, and they actually have a barcode you can scan on your phone. I don't know everything it tells you, but you can scan it on your phone and it'll be right around the U.S. seal. And we also have just purchased something. It's a ultra high frequency reader system, and it's currently at Dale's, I think. Is that panel still at your? Okay. So it's kind of interesting for our office that this has only ever been used once for deer, and that's at Dale's property. So he's the first person in America to use it for deer, which is kind of interesting, I think. It's usually used for cattle and sheep and goats and all of that. It's 4 large panels that you can set up and leave it out for 3 or 4 days. It hooks up to a battery system, and then with those high frequency tags, if they get anywhere within 50 feet, it'll read those tags. That will send information to my computer, and it'll tell me everything that has come within that span. What Dale, I think, has done is put it on his chute and have run them through, right?
No, alleyway.
Your alleyway, okay, and it has run them all through everything he has, and it's going to read everything. It'll read like 300 tags a second. So everything can go through there, and it'll read everything. And that way, no one has to put anything down. You don't have to have hands on anything, just run them through. Some people can put them up on deer feeders.
And that's key what she said, because when Department of Ag comes out, they come out once a year, usually January through March, to do your annual inspection. And what that means is if you've got 14 deer on your inventory report, you should have 14 deer out there. And in addition to the 14 deer, the Department of Ag has to be able to see that floppy tag. And so you know, to their point with the RFID or with that floppy tag, if for whatever reason, if you've lost a tag, they being, and that's part of, you know, the laws and the regulations, they have the right for you to put that deer down, to tag it or run it through the chute. So, I mean,
I'll
that's,
tell you another thing, what they're doing at my place, we're putting a floppy tag number below on that tag with a permanent marker. If it loses this tag, you can see what that tag was on that,
Yeah.
so
but that's our point, because with, you just, you know, that's just part of the rules. And I know, and Dr. K.A.L.A made it with the Animal Disease Traceability Committee in Frankfurt, and we are, and they'll admit it, we are the most heavily regulated livestock in the state, and probably, I'd say countrywide, but definitely in the state. I mean, but that's just part of it. So, anyway, go on the tagging.
So with that panel reader, that is something purchased by our office. If you have those high frequency, does anyone have high frequency? I know there's several of you that have them. If you have those and you want to scan all of your animals, our inspectors will come out and bring that. We also have a small reader that can scan like 20 feet or so, if maybe not that far, if you don't want to set the big panel reader. And it'll also do the same thing, send to my computer, and everything will be done. It's really something we're trying to push for those of you all who have hunting facilities, because of course y'all aren't going to see them all the time. And if you have those set up and you have the deer coming up, it'll ping on this reader, and that way you don't have, you know, you're not trying to go through brush and everything trying to find these deer. So if you do that, don't have any of these tags around, because it'll pick them up every time, and it'll send them duplicates to my computer too. So.
And as you grow your herd, some of the bigger farms, the Department of Ag, if you put those, like, we're going to put those on our feeder bins. And so as those deer come and feed over the next 2 months, or right before Department of Ag shows up, and they may be able to look out in those pins, and if you've got a list that are 20 out there, and they can see 20, and they can see that they all have tags, because most of us that raise deer know that you can't see them, then that barcode, that reader will scan those, and they'll take that print out to show you that you've got those deer on the premises. Does that make sense?
If anyone would like to buy one, they're only like $10,000. So I know it was hard for me to get them to even look at this, because you know this program is overlooked a lot, because you know it's still growing. But it was Dr. K.A.L.A was really pushing for it, because it's going to help our program a lot. So in the future, if you all are re-tagging or anything, now we've got about a month left while we're still doing our annuals. Now would be the time to re-tag with these high-frequency readers. And I think Jimmy said he got his at Fort Supply, and they can put anything on it. You can put your farm name, you can put whatever color or anything you want on it. And then I think Premier and Allflex, some of those tagging, National Band and Tag companies, that will do those too.
Are we gonna eventually have to go through all that?
They've not said, I'm going to go ahead and say yes, but they have not said that that's going to have to happen.
But those are those big tags.
You can get a button. The button you can hide. You know, that
Just a high
I
frequency.
know my hunters don't want to see the tags. It's,
of course not, yeah. Which is what those news tags are good for, the metal ones. You can't really see them.
We went through this very same thing, the very same thing that told us 7, 8 years ago. We had a conversion.
That's what I'm saying. They're not saying that you have to now. It's just a good idea. It's easier on your deer if you do. If you're
Well, you can do it
re-tagging,
when you AI. You can do everyone's hands up when you AI.
well, if you want to do it that way, it's not a requirement. It's just something. It's more for the hunting people, because they don't catch all the theirs all the time.
So the buttons are low frequency and the others are high frequency.
We have both. There's
Yeah.
low and high, so you can do both. So if you're running them through anything, it'll pick it up
now
on
the low frequency, how far away will they pick them up?
I want to say it's up to 20 feet.
Okay.
I'm not
So it's
sure
gonna get them.
exactly.
If we set it up at a feeder and they're coming to that feeder, it's
Yes,
gonna get them.
yes. You might have any more questions on tagging? For anyone who is new, your deer have to be tagged with both tags before they can move anywhere. And if one of them is ripped out in the trailer, that happens all the time, just let our inspector or the vet know and I'll change it and we'll fix it right then. Okay, the next point I want to talk about is record keeping and reporting. I'm kind of a stickler. I don't know if you all have noticed about record keeping because this was a hot mess when I got in here. I mean, people had 200 more deer than they actually had in their program. So I've had a lot of cleaning up to do this past year, and I finally got it comfortable enough to where I think I know what everyone has. So I just wanted to point out the importance of telling me what you actually have. Of course, you don't have to report your fawns until they're a year old, or until they move. And then everything else I need an annual report on. So what our inspectors do is an annual inspection. That's now until January 1st till March 31st. And we'll do a full inventory of everything you have and check your records and make sure they match with what we have. And then every quarter we're doing something called a quarterly. And that's just going to show what I have versus what you have, and we're going to make them match. So we're not actually looking at the deer, we're not doing anything. They may, if they're close, they may look at them, but it's not required to look at your deer 4 times a year. We're only doing it once a year, and then everyone's good to go. A lot of you all are already done with it, so I won't see anything from you all for another 3 months. So anything that you have that escapes or disappears randomly or dies needs to be reported to me. The time frames are different. So for your breeding facilities, anything that dies from natural causes or what have you, that needs to be reported within a week to me. And then for your hunting, of course, some of you all may not know when they have died or when they disappeared. So we prefer a week, but as quickly as you can get it reported to me, I can get it taken off. So if you have any that do escape, we need to be notified within 48 hours because that affects the wild deer, and Fish and Wildlife does not like that. So we need to, they don't want them to be mingling. And we don't want our deer mingling with wild deer because you don't know where they've been either. So within 48 hours of you all having any escaped deer, just let me know and we can mark those off. For those that have been harvested or slaughtered, it's the end of every month. So you can do it whenever you want to as long as it's within the month. So a lot of the hunting just sends me something they've got at the end of every month. I'll take it all off, send you a new inventory, and we'll be good to go till the next month. Do you have any questions on reporting?
Got the same question about what we killed one on Saturday afternoon of the 31st.
Well, it's the end of the month, so the 31st of the next month. I mean, I'm kind of flexible with that. I mean, some people, they do a lot of weekend hunts and it's the end to the beginning of that month. Tell me. Just don't wait until next time I ever talk to you and then you have too many.
You mentioned something earlier about turning in animals. We never reported our fawns until the next census.
A lot of people don't.
Okay.
And for what we have done, we have changed our annuals to, not when you sign up, but January to December is your annual now, which is the same as Fish and Wildlife. So all of you all would do it at the same time. So what he's saying is, used to, you would just do it every year, but now all of these are going to be less than a year if we're doing it in January, March. Not many have any. Do it? You all have babies at this time?
No.
Okay, so they're all going to be less than a year. So you'll be good within.
No, I'd have animals that would be coming up. They'll be a year old this coming spring that will go on my census. Whenever they come back out and look at every animal, that's when I turn it. Which I get everything you ahead of time. Now I'd rather do that way. We just do a checklist.
Right.
Right.
So, but your fawns.
Not my fawns last year.
I know, but now what's going to be happening is your 16 fawns were reported in 17, right?
No, because how the word is.
Because they're not a year old until May, June, or July, or August, or
Right.
they're born. So then, yeah.
So
you
you're
do your
losing
census.
the months.
My fawns that were born that were there last year didn't go on my census last year. They'll go
Right,
this
they
year's
go on
census.
this year.
They'll go on there in June.
What's that?
You put them on in June because they'll be a year
They don't
old.
do my census in June. They do my
Okay, well
census
then-
in.
Our censuses are now until March.
But here's the thing, is they're coming out to do your quarterly.
We'll have a quarterly, but we're not going to be handling the fawns.
Right, we never did put any of those extra deer on the quarterly. I always do one time a year. I used to do all my fawns on the census, and then we were told that they didn't have to go on there until they were a year old, so that's when we started doing them all at a year old.
But as a farmer, you know which farm you have, right? I mean,
Yes and no. I quit tagging all my fawns at birth. I used to tag them all, but then started having a problem with them ears getting maggots in them, getting infected, and I hate seeing fawns walk around that their ear open up and they're gonna die unless you get that out.
so when do you tag?
I'm now tagging the fawn.
Fish and Wildlife requires the floppy tag, ID tag at 6 months old.
Well, fall
They're
would
getting
be
that.
sick.
Okay.
Right, they're getting that then. And like I said, I used to be Johnny on the spot with everything, and then turning that fawn in, but, you know, there again now, since, I don't know why, but it seems to happen more in the last few years, that for whatever reason, that tag get infected, and I just hate seeing fawns walk around. I've got those out there right now with one ear.
If you tag everything you do in the fall,
Right.
you can send that in then, or you can send it in
We
January.
always were told to do it at our census, because you can still lose those animals.
Your census will be between January and,
Correct.
so they're going to be less than a year is what I'm saying.
They've been coming here now.
I'm thinking of like your 18 ponds you're gonna tag in the fall of this year, right?
Right.
Then you're gonna tell me in January 19th, so that's less than a year.
They're less than a year old. We were always told,
All right.
don't put them on until they're a year old. Until they're a year old.
Here's what I'm gonna suggest to all you in here, and then we'll move on, is I'll preach and promote to tag those fawns at day 2 with the goat tag and day 4 with a floppy tag with the USDA. That way, if you lose the goat tag, you got the floppy tag. If you lose the floppy tag, you know which one it came from, you got the goat tag in there. And we can talk about that more, but like I said, everybody does something different as long as you're within the requirements and the rules. But
Right.
it's just, as a producer, it's just easier for us to know what you got up to.
Right. I don't care when you do it, as long as you do it within the year. I mean, really.
I'd have trouble with, like Travis said, with one or two of their ears. EMT gel that you can buy at Tractor Supply. Got to put a little bit of head on both sides of the ear before you. I've not had one in 15 years.
Okay. But we'll, go ahead.
Okay, so you might have any more questions about tagging? Okay, so now I'm going to talk to you about testing, and this is the most important aspect of the program, and that's testing for CWD. So the breeding and the hunting differ in testing groups, and actually Kentucky's a lot more strict than a lot of other states, which is good because we don't have CWD. So for breeding, anything that's over 12 months or older that die for any reason except for harvesting or slaughter should be tested. So it's basically for breeding 100% testing unless you have been slaughtered or harvested. For hunting preserves, it's anything over 12 months old that are not identified, die for any reason other than harvested, or the first 10 or all Indiana deer have to be tested. So the first 10 Kentucky deer are tested, and then everything else after, you're good to not test for hunting. Everything you buy from Indiana has to be tested. That's something Indiana requires. And then if you have one that looks sick or something and it dies in your hunting, that has to be tested. Or something that has died and does not have ear tags has to be tested also. So she mentioned, Dr. Sajak mentioned earlier, you can test at Murray, which is BDC, or UK. Those are the 2 labs that test in Kentucky right now. I'm pretty sure you can take the whole animal up there if you wanted to, right? You can do a full diagnostic.
Yeah, I think, we take ours in UK, I think the CWD test, if you take the head, is like $70, and if you take the full body for the necropsy,
It's like $130.
Yeah,
So I thought it was
yeah.
$130
You can,
for the full.
I lost a bunch to EHD this year, and I said, well, I just took the whole deer. And I asked him, I said, can I just bring the whole deer? That way it saves you disposing of the body.
Right.
I said, yeah, just bring the whole deer, we'll take care of it.
Right. And for cases like what we had last year, our office will work with you if you have an outbreak like this. So for Barry, what we did was at the end of the week, every week when he was losing, we would see which ones are most susceptible to CWD. So So his 1 and 2-year-olds, we didn't require him to test because he was losing so many. It was $7,500 every deer. We had anything over 2 years old required to be tested. So we'll work with you and do a little herd plan on your deer that you're